Let's talk about our mate Jim Molan, who sadly we learnt had passed away yesterday. Strength and love again to his family. His boss in the Parliament, but more importantly his friend in life, is Peter Dutton, the Leader of the Opposition, who kindly breaks his holiday to talk about the great man from Brisbane. Nice to see you and Happy New Year to you, Peter. But let's talk about a great man who is now lost to us all.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Happy New Year to you and to all the viewers as well. Mate, it's a very sad day. Obviously, all of us who knew Jim well just knew him to be a genuine human being. He was somebody who had a lot of time for anybody that would come up and say hello. He'd served his country with great distinction. He was somebody whose word you could trust. You could shake his hand and you knew that the deal was done. And most importantly, in my eyes, he was a fantastic family man. He was a great husband to Anne, and she stood by him over, many years, the thick and the thin of politics and being posted to different parts of the world, and their children and grandchildren. He just loved them and had a great adoration for them, and in return they felt the same way about him, and it was always nice to see them. And Erin and others, the obvious affection they had for their dad, I thought it was a beautiful thing.
He was obviously very passionate about many an issue, but certainly about the defence of this country. When you were the Defence Minister, he would have been no doubt knocking on your door. As the opposition leader, he'd be knocking on your door. What was he like when he was in full bore at you, saying, mate, come on, get on with this?
Well, he was a no-nonsense sort of bloke, as most military leaders are, because there's only so many hours in the day and they've got planning to do and all sorts of considerations and strategy to dream up. But he was pretty definite about his ideas in the defence space, and he was a Major General. He'd served his country for 4 decades. He'd been the Chief of Operations in the Middle East, and he had a huge brain. So his advice is advice you want to listen to. And as Defence Minister, I spent a lot of time talking with him, particularly about the threats, and he detailed this in his book, what our country might face over the course of the next decade or two. He was very open and honest about that. Obviously, we had a lot to do with each other when I was in Home Affairs and had responsibility for Operation Sovereign Borders, of which he was the architect. He saved countless lives of people otherwise it would have drowned at sea if Labor's policy had have continued. So he's got a lot of runs on the board, and it's, as is always the case when somebody this good passes away so early in tragic circumstances, you just think, why? Why do the best people go first? And he had a lot more living to do. He had a lot more work in the Parliament. It wasn't just his military prowess and expertise that he brought to the table. He was somebody who had a great passion, for example, in relation to trying to reduce the incidence of stillbirths in our country. He worked hard with Greg Hunt and Nicole Flint and others in the last Parliament to put funding into that space to help mothers and fathers and families in that terrible situation. So he was an all-rounder, an incredibly good bloke and a wonderful Australian.
And also, to me, a perfect example of the type of person that we want to end up in our Parliament. This was a person who had served his country, could have put his feet up, but instead got involved in the fight, wouldn't give it up even in the early rounds when it didn't look like he was going to get into the Parliament. He fought hard to get into a position to be able to make sure that he was able to hand a seat over should the worst have happened when it came to his health. That is the type of person we want in our Parliament. We need more Jim Molans. How do we find more Jim Molans, in the next couple of years?
Well, look, just been talking with friends about this over the holidays. I mean, I approached mates of mine who have been successful in business, trying to get more people into the party. They just say, look, I'd love to run and love to be a part of representing the party or the country, but with social media and the scrutiny otherwise, they just say, why on earth would you do it? I think my kids have been cured of any interest of going into politics, I might say, but Jim had a tenacity. He left school and went straight into the Australian Defence Force, and he was moulded and taught and influenced in a very positive way from a young age. And we don't talk enough in our country about the patriotism, the love of our country. We get embarrassed by it. We think it's too American. the fact is we live in the best country in the world, and he knew that, and he wanted to be in the Liberal Party because he believed and he lived and he fought for our ideals, and he was passionate about making sure that our future was secure, that his grandchildren could enjoy the country that he grew up in, and that their grandchildren could grow up in. So it's tough. We do want to get more people into the party, and more people should join. I've got, again, a lot of mates who sort of have lots of free advice from the outside, but you've got to join the party and you need to have a say. You're not happy with the way the party's going, whether it's our party or Labor Party or wherever, you've got to put your hand up, and we shouldn't take for granted what we've got in our country, and Jim Molan never did.
Well, what's the one line from a telly show? You know, decisions are made by those who turn up, and he turned up over and over and over again. I'm just looking at that overlay of his laugh. God, I'll miss his laugh. Peter, nice to talk to you. We'll do it again on wider issues a little bit later. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, mate. Take care.
Good on you, mate. Peter Dutton, their leader of the opposition.